You are live.
Okay, can you guys hear us okay? On Zoom? Perfect. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. It is 10:32 a.m. This is set to go till 11 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. With me in the boardroom is Vice Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards. We have County Manager Emilio Chavez, as well as Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We have a couple of staff members joining us today for our presentation, which is going to be the 2023 through 2028 Transportation Improvement Program new projects. And this is an informational session. And with that, am I passing
Right,
it?
pass it on to the county engineer, Scott.
Okay, I'll pass it to the county engineer, Scott Linden.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning.
I can hear you, Scott.
Did you hear?
Any luck now?
Yep.
Yes.
Better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good morning again, Scott Lindblom, County Engineer. And with me presenting today is Becky Kahn, Senior Civil Engineer from our Traffic Engineering Group. And Becky is going to share her screen, and so we can all see the presentation. Wonderful. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. So this year we'll be making the formal TIP presentation to you on July 11th this year. One part of the TIP presentation that we do is talk about new projects that we're adding to the previous TIP that you adopt at the end of the year. So this year we're taking a little different approach to make sure that you have that opportunity to ask questions about new projects that we're adding that perhaps you may not have heard much or at all about. Becky, next slide, please. So again, the TIP will be presented to you on July 11th, and this, again, today, we're just going to focus on those new projects. Next slide, please. The annual TIP update, as you may recall, outlines the county's future plans for transportation improvement projects and programs, and is a required planning document per RCW. In that TIP, it includes both the annual, the 6-year, and the 20-year list of projects. And it's important to add projects to that TIP to allow us to be eligible to look for grants, and also allows us to begin work on those projects. Next slide, please. The new projects that you'll hear about today come from a variety of different programs we have, each of which generates its own list of projects. When we look at individual programs, say the capacity program, any identified projects that are in that program are prioritized against other capacity projects. Once we do that with each of these programs, all of those programs' highest priority projects are then prioritized against one another. Once we get all that done, those are the projects that we look to add to the next TIP update, or in this case, the 2023 to 2028 TIP. Next slide, please. So the proposed TIP that you will see next month for the first time will include a list of projects in various stages of development, anywhere from what we call concept to construction. When projects are completed, or when construction is complete, projects come off of that list and you won't see them anymore. Sometimes we lose projects on the TIP, say when a project is annexed and then that project is no longer in our jurisdiction. This year, we're looking to add 6 new projects, which Becky will go over right now. Becky, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Scott. So our first project is in the northeast area of the county near Tanglewilde. Public Works has received numerous citizen complaints about the lack of sidewalk along Kingham Street between 3rd Avenue and Martin Way. There's actually a worn-in path along the side of the street due to the amount of walkers that are using that as a connection. So this project came up through both of our pedestrian and bicycle programs, as well as our Safe Routes to School program. And we'll look at installing sidewalk in this section to provide a safe walking route for students that are using it to get to school, and also as a connection between homes down in the Tanglewilde to businesses up along the Martin Way corridor. This area is really developing a lot in terms of new businesses and such in that area. This project is in the early design phases right now, and it'll have a good opportunity for future grant funding through either the pedestrian and bicycle program or the Safe Routes to School program. So next I'm going to move down into the southwest corner of the county in Grand Mound, where we have a new project along 196th Avenue between Sargent Road and Elderberry Street. This project will address capacity in the area of the county that is seeing a lot of growth and new development. This road will also see a lot of added traffic, we believe, with the completion of the roundabout at US 12 and Sargent. That'll be happening here at the end of the year and into next year. So this project came through our capacity program, and we'll look at adding roundabouts on the two ends of 196th, as well as an additional travel lane. And it'll also look at pedestrian improvements such as sidewalk, bike lanes, and lighting improvements. This project is also in the early phases of the design process, and it is likely that portions of this project could be funded through developer mitigation. So moving to the intersection of Fir Tree Road and Rainier Road, which is located just kind of south of Lacey. This intersection has recently shown up as both a safety and a capacity concern through two studies we have recently conducted. One of those studies, the Thurston County Safety Evaluation Memo, ranked intersections throughout the county in terms of their collision rates. And then the second study is the Rural Mobility Study, which is still in the process of being conducted. And it looks at intersections and corridors throughout the county in terms of what their capacity needs will be in the future. So this project came up through both of our capacity and our safety programs. And the planned improvements would look at addressing congestion on Fir Tree and also installing safety measures at the intersection. This intersection will likely be a good project to receive funding through the Highway Safety Improvement Program in the future. So next, I have two projects that come from our Fish Passage program. Thurston County has an estimated 330 culverts, which hinder fish passage, and our Fish Passage program considers different criteria that helped create a viable fish passage project list. So these come off of that list. The first is Thompson Creek Road over Thompson Creek, which is located off of Skookumchuck Road. This project will look to replace an 8-foot culvert with an 80-foot prefabricated steel bridge. These improvements will increase the amount of fish habitat and protect the biological health of our waterways. The second fish passage project is Shawn Drive over an unnamed tributary to Dempsey Creek. This is located off of Delphi Road. This project will look at replacing a 3-foot wide culvert with a 30-foot prefabricated steel bridge. Both of these projects are scheduled for construction in 2023, and they also have the potential to receive funding through the Salmon Recovery Funding Board. So the final new project that I'm going to talk about today is one you may have heard about. It is a culvert replacement along Cooper Road at Mock's Chehalis Creek. Cooper Road is currently closed due to the existing culverts failing during the flooding event we experienced earlier this year in January. A study is currently underway to determine what the replacement structure will look like at this location. But in the meantime, we are going to be borrowing a temporary bridge from Mason County so that we can get that road opened in the meantime. It is likely that FEMA funding.
Yeah, movable bridge.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Okay.
Railroad cars work really good for that, but nobody likes to go walk with a cheap solution.
It's likely that FEMA funding will cover some of the costs of this project. So thanks for the time today to review these new projects that Public Works is excited to be adding to the TIP. We look forward to getting more in depth, as Scott said, at our later presentation on the TIP in July. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Can you stop sharing your screen?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Edwards?
I'd be interested, I mean, these are interesting to know, but I'd like to know just a rough, what are we talking about for dollars? For whatever your proposal is, like Fir Tree, you don't have a plan because you're gonna study and get a plan, but about how much money are we talking about on all of these? And they can be as you know, within 50,000, within 100,000. I really don't care. I just want a rough idea of what we might contemplate spending.
So we can talk about like doing the alternative analysis, which is when the pre-design part. That'll depend on the project specific, but generally that's between like 50 and 150,000 to get an idea of what the improvement will be. And once we know that improvement, which is why we do that pre-design, we can then have a better idea of what the cost will be for that project.
And is that specifically to Fir Tree?
So that would be, yeah, Fir Tree 196, and then the first one on Martin Way or Kingham Street.
And then where does that money come from? Out of the road fund?
That's correct.
Yeah, and Cooper Road, I believe, is another one that we'll be doing the study on yet.
I would like to have a better idea of the cost, mainly so I can at least prioritize what I think is the more important one. And like the last one you covered, okay, the road's been closed. Well, okay, if it's been closed, why do we need it? You know, why do we need to invest there if the road's been closed? Is there a good back road in and that's working out? It only gets four cars every day, and how can we justify spending $300,000 if it gets 4 cars a day? I'd like to know a little more so we can start prioritizing how we make our expenditures fit.
Sure, and I can add a
Likely
bit.
that the total cost is gonna be millions, not.
I know that, but
Which is your point.
that's why I don't wanna just arbitrarily pick something out. I wanna have, you know, maybe I don't like the guy living on Moxie Road and I don't wanna fix his bridge. I don't know. So tell me a story.
Yeah, I can speak to the Cooper Road. That road serves both DNR timber harvest area and the off-road vehicle park that is operated by Grace Harbor County. Grace Harbor County does, at first blush, we thought there would be another way in to the ORV park and the logging area. However, that would require all the log trucks up in that area when they're doing active timber harvesting to drive through a very busy area where the ORV customers are offloading their vehicles, and apparently, you know, with that, small children are running around, and it would be a very problematic area to send large.
Okay, so that's good enough. I don't wanna drag this out.
Oh, okay, okay,
Scott, but
gotcha.
the reality is, who's gonna pay for it? Well, maybe we should go to DNR and say, look, this is all about timber harvest, and you guys want a bridge in there, pony up. You know, I don't wanna rob money from the road fund and use it in areas that I think is not as good a benefit to the public as other areas might be. So I'm all about prioritizing and pressurizing other entities that you want it fixed, pony up. So I wanna know more about that stuff before we spend millions of dollars.
Yeah, and I appreciate your concern about protecting road fund. That's very near and dear to all of our hearts. With the Cooper Road, we will be seeking FEMA reimbursement for that, as it did sustain damage in the early January storm events. So that's one where we do expect to get, I believe it's about a 90% funding from FEMA whenever that process gets through, which could take some time.
See, I think that statement is one of the more important statements that you could have made in this presentation. But the county manager has his hand up. He's gonna give me the dickens about something.
No. And maybe the purpose of having a project on the transportation improvement program, that's the TIP, and the board has the legislative requirement to approve on a daily basis. before Public Works can begin an actual design on any project, that project needs to be in this document. Because that has to be, that's by law. So you're asking excellent questions. But at this point, it will be difficult to give you a level of magnitude as to how much those projects will be because the design has not started.
Oh, okay.
So staff doesn't have the elements as to how, for instance, the Fur Road and Rainier Road. I travel that intersection often, I understand the need. But staff doesn't have in place the fix, in a way, to address the concerns because they have not been authorized to look into the details because it's not in the document.
That's fine.
And just because you add a project on the Transportation Improvement Program, that doesn't mean you're committed to construction to the end. So you're just adding a project on the TAP because either the public or anybody else has identified as a need. So when we go through the process of determining how that need is going to be addressed, is going to be a cost estimate, and that will be another discussion with the board.
Okay. I mean, but the reality is, if it's a $10,000 item to fix fir tree, free right turn, don't make a left turn, whatever you're talking about, those don't bug me quite as much. But when we start talking about, I don't know if Robin's right on this, but millions of dollars, I want to know something about millions of dollars, because I might just say, I don't want to be a micromanager, but I might, this is one commissioner, I might say, we're not replacing that. You know, I don't want you wasting your time on there. Go X, and if the state wants to kick some money in, but no, where Scott comes up with, okay, we're gonna get 90% replacement from FEMA. Well, okay, but I might wanna go for the 10% coming from the state.
Absolutely, that's an excellent strategy, but before we can give the options to the board, a project needs to be included in the document to begin that analysis.
Okay, but the more extensive project, I wanna know more about it.
And you will, absolutely you will.
Well, even before it gets to that point where you're going out for a bid study or whatever, I'm concerned that oftentimes we don't have enough input at certain phases of activity. I'm not criticizing anything, I'm just saying our job is to satisfy our constituents and do the best job we can for those constituents. And I mean, I'm just picking on the Cooper Road thing because I know that area out there pretty good. And I mean, I'm glad to hear FEMA's gonna foot the bill. But I also hear once in a while, it's a maybe. Maybe FEMA's gonna foot the
Maybe, and
bill.
I think
That's all that
that
is.
is
So
absolutely
if it's
correct.
only a slight maybe, I don't wanna go for it. Let the state get involved in that. I wanna save the road fund for the projects that might make more sense, where we have a potential road closure, over in Ty's district, that one where the culvert is collapsing or something like that. I wanna be able to prioritize some things more than other things, and I don't even know what those things are yet.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, but I think it's before we can even get to the point to give you all the necessary tools for you to exercise that decision-making process. A project needs to be included in this document before they can do anything.
Okay.
Because if those projects are not included in these documents, we cannot explore any grant opportunities, we cannot explore anything because they're not authorized to work on these projects.
Well, I'm not saying you're authorized to work on it anyway, without knowing more myself.
That's the decision, if you don't want to include any of this.
Oh, I wanna include it at this point.
So that's
But-
your prerogative, you don't want to include any of these projects that have been submitted to you, that's the decision of the board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure we have some involved.
Commissioner Munson.
Ramiro pretty much covered it. It seemed like what you were saying is, it's kind of like the docket, like we don't
do it unless it's on the docket.
we're not saying that the things we put on the docket are things we're gonna approve. We're saying we're interested enough in them to explore the details, and that sounds like what this tip is.
Right.
We're not committing to completing the projects, but we wanna know more details about cost, and then we can prioritize and stuff.
Yeah, what you do is by adding in, And some of those projects may not be stated for included on the next year because it's a 6-year plan. Maybe included to work in the third and the fourth year. But given that authorization gives the staff of Public Works to look, what I call is development, the scope, the schedule, and the budget. And then the board has the authority. If you don't, if there's not capacity in the road fund, then your priority is on point. Where you want to prioritize, what the board wants to prioritize that.
We might wanna save the legacy forest, and to do that, we might not fix a road.
One question, Scott, this may be jumping ahead to July 11th, but where on our program is that project where there was like an online survey about design for, it's like near Evergreen Parkway? And do you want a roundabout, or do you want this, or do you want that? And is that something that's like on the tip and going forward, or is that still one that was being scoped out and the board would have to move that forward, or where is that in the queue of 49 projects?
I can speak to that, Scott.
But
It is still included in the tip. I think it's in like the first half in there. And it would be, at this point, we've completed the alternative analysis to determine what the improvement would be at that location, which is 2 roundabouts. And I have that study if you were wanting to look at it closer. But the next phase of that would be to move it into design.
Is there a time on that one? Like, is there a projected time it'll go to design? Or do we
Well,
have
right
to-
now we're looking for grant opportunities to fund that design is where that one would be at.
And I think, if I may, that's actually a really good example about how the system works of doing these early studies, as the county manager is mentioning. We do these studies to see if there is a problem. And if there is a problem, what are the options to address it? What's the most practical means to address it? Once we find those practical means, we might have a preliminary design on our tip out near the end of the 6-year plan, and we keep it on there because then that allows us to look for grant money. We may have projects on the tip that sit there for years with our hope that we get grant money for it. But if we don't get grant money, we may not build it for quite some time if we do it all. And of course, that would be certainly up to the direction of the board. But having the study done gives us an idea what the fix might be. Keeping that fix on the tip allows us to keep looking for grant money that might be out there.
Scott, and following up on that, my understanding is any state or federal money, in order for the county to qualify to receive the money, those projects need to be included in this document.
Absolutely correct. So that's why you might see projects out in the later years of the tip. They might be there for a few years, and we might keep pushing them back from year to year to year until we get that grant money. And then hopefully our plan would be that we get grant money, but we've had some projects on there for a while that we've not been successful at grant money, but we keep applying, and they have not moved forward beyond the preliminary design stage.
If I might expand upon that as well, just that we like to we try to have a lot of different variety of projects, which is why we have all those programs that we look at. So that, because there are so many different types of grant opportunities, some for pedestrian and bicycles, some more for capacity, or some for safety. So we like to have that variety on the tip so that if the occasion does arise, like with all this federal funding, infrastructure funding that's coming out, we have projects that we can look to get money for that are needed through our priority process.
Thank you. Okay, my questions are in regards to the 49 projects. How does that compare to other years? I mean, is that a lot of projects? Is it kind of gone down?
It fluctuates from year to year, but generally it's, in that same order of magnitude. And what it reflects is projects really in all stages of design. So we might have some that we finish construction or most construction this year, and we have just a small amount of money in the ensuing year. So for instance, projects that were mostly done this year, we might have project closeout in the first part of next year. So that might still be on the tip next year. We've got other projects that we're just starting the preliminary design on, then kind of the whole suite of projects in between. So we'll have projects that are in design, that are in construction. But generally it's, the same order of magnitude, yes.
And the 49 projects, is that included with the 6 projects, or then if we approve these other 6 projects, will it be 55?
It would be 49, including those 6 projects.
Okay. And how is the priority set?
For these 6, well, with each of those programs that we have, in each of those programs, there's different criteria on how projects within those individual programs are prioritized. And if I think back to the slide, and I forget which slide it was, but say in the bridges program, I mean, that might be a great example. We have several bridges we would like to replace, but some might have a very low volume of traffic. So they might rank lower than one that's got a busier road. Other bridges, for example, might have worse condition than some others, so they would rank higher. So when you look at things like that, the use, the impact, the number of people affected, those are all things that weigh into it. So you could take that same example and look at safety. How many people would it benefit? What's the cost benefit of building guardrails versus rumble strips versus this or that. So we try to look at different criteria for each one of those different programs because they're all slightly different criteria.
Thank you. And this question is more for Robin. Didn't we allocate some design funding in the budget for this year? Yes?
Yes.
And how does that, Scott, I guess, help the whole projects? Does it make them go faster through that design period? Does it cover all the projects, or is it kind of picking and choosing depending on the priority?
Pre-design. We put pre-design money both in Public Works and in Central Services.
Yeah, so having that funding secured for some of the pre-design work and design work certainly helps us move forward on some of these projects. As I mentioned a moment ago, there are some projects that we reach a certain point and we just wait for design money or wait for construction money or wait for that big pot of money that lets us move ahead. So getting the money just allows us to begin that process and work toward the next phase of the project, whether it's to design or to construction.
It also, I would say, helps inform the department. It helps us to get the amount, a better sense of just how big the budget needs to be. It starts the preliminary work on what the solution options might be. Having the pre-design available, it helps us figure out if it's even a project that we need to pursue. So having the pre-design money available for the department to use helps us move things forward and bring a better plan to the board when the time comes.
I saw Matt turn on his camera, not sure if he wanted to say
He's
something.
itching to say something.
No, the only thing excuse me. The only thing I was going to add is that Commissioner Edwards is always talking about finding that good revenue. And this smaller amount of pre-design money allows staff to leverage that for much larger amounts of design and construction money that might be through federal programs or state programs as well.
Yeah, I have found that in applying for grants for facility construction, that you have to have so much of the work already kind of mapped out to be able to even complete the application. So I completely agree with what Matt's saying.
And if I may add one more thing, is at the Transportation Policy Board and the Thurston County Planning Council, there's been discussions around all this contingency money with the federal funding that wasn't able to be obligated by the state. Because we have projects on the tip, we can go and we're prepared with these studies. We can react and get that extra regional federal funding as well. So I know it's been at the TAC level, but I know that will be coming up at the policy board as well as the council meeting. So please keep that in mind.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I would like to make sure that as we move forward on all this stuff, that Matt gave us a presentation, I think yesterday, on the Black Lake Belmore peat bog, you know, that you're trying to fix, I guess is the best way to put it. Well, you know, that gets a lot of traffic. But if you go down in Zinkner Valley, there's a similar road down there that's sinking all the time in a peat bog, and it gets about 2 vehicles a day, you know, that goes across it. I want to make sure that we don't waste money. And I'm not saying I don't like the people down in Zinkner Valley. The reality is, you know, better make the speed limit 10 down there going across that peat bog rather than Black Lake Belmore. I mean, one of the complaints was that trailers come off, you know, once in a while on a bump. Well, in the meantime, till we get it fixed, we ought to have a speed limit, you know, issue there so that kind of thing doesn't happen. But I just want to make sure that we prioritize properly. That's all. My whole thing is about prioritizing everything properly and not wasting money. You know, I'll use Zinkner Valley again. I mean, I'm hoping we don't spend too much money looking at it. Anybody can see where the problem is and how to fix it versus the Black Lake Belmore. I mean, I have to say I question 400 piling being driven in because I think there's a better fix coming from an Army engineer standpoint. But they don't want to ever let me implement my cheap program that works, so.
And I
By the
think
way-
you bring up a great point because that really highlights the success that we do have in prioritizing our work. When you look at the Black Lake Belmore Bridge and then the Zinkner Valley Road, you know, the reason we're pursuing Black Lake Belmore Bridge is it's certainly a higher traffic volume road, which is why we're putting our emphasis up there versus some other areas of the county.
Sure, appreciate it.
And that's why McElfresh Road that you're referring to literally has
Is
a
that the
couple.
name of it that cuts across the valley there?
Yeah, that's McElfresh Road. And we literally took some timber stringers from the backyard and placed them across that bridge to get traffic across it.
Good
So,
for you.
I think that's a
Railroad
good
cars,
example of what you're
they solve a lot
talking
of
about.
The folks I talked to down there said it was the beaver's fault, so.
That's a hydraulic buildup on the upper side of that, yeah.
Okay, it's 11:04, and thank you so much for this presentation. It was an informational session only, so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.